Hi, everybody in Gmat Club. My name's Donna Baumann, and I am a senior admissions consultant with Stratus Admissions. And I hope this is going to be very useful for all of you out there today that are thinking about an MBA, and we have a couple of special situations that I think will be useful. So I have to thank my panelists very much. They are all on the West Coast and have agreed to get up at a ridiculously early hour. So I have Bradley Chi, who's in the UCLA Fembo program, and then a married couple, Fanny Pnewell and Alex Karen, who have also agreed to talk with us today. So let me start by just having all of you introduce yourself, say a little bit about where you're from, a little bit of professional background, and then the program at UCLA that you're in now. So I'll start with Bradley.
Yeah, I'll kick things off. Thanks, Donna. Again, everyone, good morning. My name is Bradley Chi. I'm originally from the Bay Area. I'm now living in LA. As Donna mentioned, I'm in the UCLA Fembo program, which means that I'm working full-time while earning my MBA from UCLA. So my industry that I came from and I'm still in is technology. I work for a fitness tech startup called Tempo. And the last piece of that was right now I'm earning my MBA at UCLA, and I'm hoping to stay focused on and in technology as an industry.
Got it.
I can go next. My name is Fanny. I'm originally from Montreal, Canada. I've always have a great interest for the beauty industry, so I studied chemical engineering in undergrad. I worked as an engineering consultant for 4 years after graduating, and wanted to go back to my first passion, so transition to the MBA to focus on brand management and beauty.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here. My name is Alex. I'm also from Montreal. I am an industrial engineering background from training, and then after undergrad, I pivoted into consulting, where I worked at Accenture Consulting for 4 years, mostly specializing in financial services and digital transformation within that industry. And then I kind of always been passionate about technology, so decided to do my MBA to kind of pivot to that ecosystem into a product role in technology.
Got it. Okay, great. So this is, you all have, came to your MBA decision, different backgrounds, different goals that you want to go forward. I'm going to start with Bradley and just ask you, so when you were, your situation was interesting because you got this great job at Tempo and were, thinking about full-time MBA programs, but then also realized how much you liked your job. So when you were going back and sort of researching MBA programs, tell me a little bit about, what were helpful things that you did, and a little bit about, how like what you learned about, sort of options to be able to keep learning while getting your MBA.
Yeah. So for context, I am at a current awesome startup called Tempo. It's a fitness tech startup that's producing and manufacturing a home fitness solution, kind of in the same industry as like Peloton, Tonal, and Mirror. I knew that I wanted to get my MBA pretty early on in my career at some point when I was in tech to not only up level, but potentially pivot into the product side of things, spinning off into product management or data analytics. And when the pandemic hit, when I was starting to, evaluate full-time versus, Fembo, which kind of came down the road later, it was a decision that was based on the fact that at Tempo, I had an opportunity to kind of elevate my career into data analytics, which is actually where I am in now, and up level into a management role because of the fact that it's such a small startup and just kind of the opportunity that I had at the company. So when evaluating that decision to go full-time or part-time, it was predicated on the fact that I had this awesome company that was that I was currently at, and at the time I was only there for about 6 months, and decided to pivot into the Fembo program because I had the opportunity to go to UCLA, which was my top choice of a program, because of their connections with technology and kind of all the different things that they have available, while working remotely here in LA and being able to participate in all the different opportunities, clubs, that, were available on campus. So kind of going back to the question, what were some of the most helpful things that I did? The biggest thing was just connecting with current students. And I'm sure Fanny and Alex can attest to that too. But the UCLA community is one that I found to be really warm and welcoming, as with a lot of other programs. But specifically, UCLA students were, willing to jump on coffee chats with me, remotely because of, COVID at the time. And it was really awesome to kind of hear their voice and hear their decision to, pursue their MBA and what, made UCLA such an attractive option for them. And then ultimately help me kind of decide, this is the right thing to focus, not only on earning my MBA, but also elevating my career at Tempo. And it was a great decision, and I'm really excited about it.
Okay. And how about Fanny and Alex, in terms of when you think back to this sort of process of, if you step back to a year and a half ago, what would you do differently? What was some of the things that you felt like were most helpful when you were approaching? There's so much, it's amazing actually how much information you have to absorb in such a short amount of time. So talk to us a little bit about your experience.
I can kick it off. You're right. When you start the process, it's kind of overwhelming in terms of how much information there is out there and what program to kind of tackle. So I'm going to echo definitely what Bradley said in terms of, talking to current students to really understand the culture and how things are really happening in each program. I think also I wanted to mention is, taking a step back and understanding why you want to do an MBA, doing that reflection kind of helps you position and understand what program is really fitted for you. In terms of to answer your question in terms of what to do differently, if we were to approach the process again, I would try to start even earlier. It's a very long process, and I feel like, you kind of get rushed at some point. So starting earlier would have made that more enjoyable in the end.
Right.
If you have anything to add.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And for a bit of context, Alex and I applied in round 2 for most schools. And we were very rushed at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So starting earlier is definitely what I would do differently. Working with a consultant really helped us through the process, and I would start that earlier as well. We studied for the Gmat like on our own. We took some online classes, but I think it wasn't as helpful as if we would have partnered with a consultant earlier. So that's something I would definitely do differently.
Right. It's something that I've seen on my end as a consultant. I'm actually working with more people earlier, and it seems like every year it's earlier and earlier. So like I actually started working with my first client for round 1, 2022 in December. So, and it kind of makes sense, because if you are going to make an investment working with a consultant, you might as well have more months, because you just have more time and you have more time to do exercises and really think, because once the MBA program starts, and I think you all could experience or talk to this a little bit, it's almost like, the ride you get on the roller coaster ride and it's just off the tracks, and you just don't even have time to think as much. So it's good to spend that year before business school really thinking about what you need, what is going to be most useful, so that you can then execute the plan when you're in your MBA program. How about, so what was, in terms of like the most stressful parts of the process? And anybody can jump in to start with this if you'd like. So just, and how did you manage it? How did you manage the stress? I have a feeling Bradley, because he's such an exercise guy, and actually just a shout out to Tempo Fitness. I'm a big fan of watching them after learning about them through Bradley, but Lindsey Vaughn is actually does some of their exercise classes now. So maybe that was part of it.
Yeah, I can definitely kick things off on this one. So I think kind of what Alex actually mentioned, I think, is one of the more stressful parts about this process is it's kind of like about finding your voice and your story. I think everyone, for the most part, when you're pursuing your MBA, has some sort of an idea, kind of what you want to get out of it, post MBA, what you're looking to do, and kind of what kind of program you want to get into. But I think when you're starting the application process, it's a little bit difficult to kind of take a step back, evaluate everything you've done in your career, and understand how that makes you kind of the most interesting candidate in the room when applying. How I manage this, Donna is definitely right. A lot of exercise, going on runs, and being able to actually remove myself from the process was really big. But I would also say taking things day by day was really important. And I worked with Donna directly in this application process. And I just got to say that without her, I'm not quite sure I would have made it through the finish line, because she really helped me not only find my voice and story, as I alluded to, as my consultant, but helped me understand and really break things down, and taking it day by day. I think Stratus did a great job of helping make every step kind of, achievable, and really took this big, process and kind of broke it down into little segments. So then when you do get into, the round 2 deadline, which is when I applied as well, you can really kind of feel that weight lifted after you hit submit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. Donna was definitely a stress reliever for us too. Yeah, so one of the things I found was more stressful for me was taking the Gmat. Where we are from, it's not typical to do standard tests when we apply to undergrad. So that's not something I had ever done before. And I'm not a natural good tester. So for me, it was very stressful to study for it. And then taking the exam at a center in person was a good amount of stress. And so what I did is I would study for some periods, and then I would allow myself to take some time off to try to balance everything, because it would have been easy to just keep going, keep studying all the time. But I think it's very important to take some breaks and to allow yourself to relax, because in the end, if you're too stressed, you're not going to perform well. So really understanding that you need a balance, I think, is very important.
Yeah, and I don't have much to add. I would definitely echo everything around how, working with Donna helped us a lot to reduce that stress, to kind of know what's coming and what are our priorities, and kind of manage that workload. But obviously there is stress. Even once you hit submit, there's no stress, but then you get invited to interviews, and then there's more stress. And then after interviews, you have the waiting period, which is just, so I would just, recommend to kind of just try to enjoy the process, because it really only happened once. To just try to see the big picture sometimes, and be like just excited in that, because it's a pretty cool, life-changing decision that you're taking.
Right. Okay, and actually that sort of segues a little bit into all this work. When you're applying to business school, you're preparing for interviews, you're doing all this research. Have you found that some of the interview prep and all the practicing that you did just for the interviews for MBA, has that been helpful in your some of your internship recruiting, or in some of the things that you're doing as a student now?
We can kick it off. I can go on this one. I think it is useful. There's definitely like a lot more information once you arrive, but I think it's important to research a program, because all programs are so different. And when you start and you kind of said it, Donna, when you start, it's like that roller coaster. It's fast paced. So kind of having an idea of what you want to do in the program, kind of having an idea of what club you're interested in getting involved, kind of helps you manage your time in the start. So I think that research is not only useful for the application itself, it is useful for when you arrive, to get your bearings and kind of understanding what's out there.
Yeah, and now that we are recruiting for internships, I would say all the practice that we did and all the preparation that we did for MBA interviews are so useful because a lot of the interviews start with behavioral questions, and we had prepared that a lot for the MBA interviews. And now I feel like we have a lot of tools to tackle these internship interviews, and a lot of the preparation is similar, so that is definitely useful at the moment.
Got it. Anything, Bradley, you want to say before we jump into the next segment?
Yeah, I'll be brief, but I think kind of just what Alex and Fanny said kind of hit on the nail. You know, you kind of come in with a roadmap of, you know, how, you know, the different clubs you want to get into. You know, you obviously can reconnect with some of the, you know, students that you've, you know, met with throughout the process. And for me, I was obviously researching 2 different programs, or specifically because I had this decision to make. And I think it helped just kind of, again, when I got onto campus, I had an idea of kind of what I want to do, because it's kind of like a fire hose with, you know, all the different opportunities, clubs that, you know, you can kind of figure out, you know, again, where you want to make your path when you get onto campus.
Got it. Okay, and I'm going to ask Bradley some questions about full-time versus part-time in a minute, but I see there's a question in the chat, and I'm going to take this because I think I can cover it. It's Harish has asked, now that the GRE is widely accepted by business schools, does the GRE affect my scholarship chances compared to GMAT? And I would say, I mean, there's no, schools give scholarships to the students that they feel like will bring the most to their community. Like they want to have, you know, the most interesting, challenging, the students that will elevate the class. So definitely a high GMAT score can help elevate the class, but a high GRE score, schools are increasingly looking at that. As you all know too, there's, you know, it's sort of like a plethora of test options that exist now, from executive assessment to GRE to some schools who will do a test waiver. I think in some cases, if you get accepted on a test waiver, that the school is saying, okay, we're looking at these other aspects of you, but that may or may not diminish your scholarship chances, because in some ways, you know, the prize that you're getting from the school at that point is that they're considering you without the test score. So that may diminish your options in terms of scholarships. But in terms of GRE versus GMAT, I don't think you should worry about it. I think you should take the test and submit to the school with the score or the test that best showcases your ability, and let this, you know, because you don't really control really at the end of the day what the scholarship decision is. So that's sort of more in my wheelhouse probably to answer that than you guys. So just jumping in on that. So Bradley, I want people to understand, I think, first of all, I have to say, and it's funny that I'm talking to all UCLA students, but I actually, as it turns out, work with quite a few, and I have actually many clients who are at UCLA Anderson. And I think it's a great program, and I'm such a fan of this Fembo option, which I don't think that many people realize is out there. So Bradley, maybe you could talk to us a little bit about sort of what the Fembo program is, what kind of, how many classes you're taking now, and you know, obviously you're just a quarter into it, but just share with people, because I don't think everybody knows what that is.
Yeah, so Fembo stands for Fully Employed MBA, and it's an option that UCLA offers for their MBA program. Other programs also offer some sort of version of this, but I think, again, going back to the research piece, definitely do your research ahead of time to understand what the difference is, because that was really important to me, to make sure that I was still going to be able to participate in some of the, you know, awesome things that Anderson has to offer as a Fembo. So when you're applying to Fembo, you have to be employed. That's like the biggest difference. I think if you apply to a full-time program, you know, you don't necessarily need to have a current job when, you know, hitting submit. But when you apply to Fembo, you do. And it's a little bit different in the sense you have to, you know, really understand, again, you know, why you're kind of doing Fembo versus full-time, because that is part of the application process. They basically want to know how you're going to use your MBA to basically accelerate your current role and or pivot. I'm taking two classes per quarter right now. The finish time of your MBA in the Fembo program is an extra quarter. So that's why I will walk and graduate in 2024, even though Fanny, Alex, and I all started this past fall. The biggest difference, again, is kind of the time in terms of that. Obviously I'm working full time throughout the week. It definitely helps that I'm working remotely, so I can kind of balance all of the schoolwork that comes into play. But in terms of things that I've really enjoyed so far, I've obviously enjoyed participating in some of the clubs on Anderson's campus, being able to, connect with folks, not only in the full-time program, but meet other, individuals who also made a very deliberate choice that I did in terms of, looking to continue their current role and earn their MBA at the same time. The other biggest factor that I would say too is, you can participate in some of the on-campus recruiting options that Anderson offers. You just will do it at a later time than the full-timers, as Fanny and Alex are looking for, summer internships this summer. A lot of Fembas will look for summer internships in their second year.
Got it. And are you going to be taking courses then through the summer quarter, or is the Fembo program off in the summer?
Yeah, so you will take a course in the summer. I believe the course load depends on kind of what you want, but you can take the summers off as well. It'll just push that finish time a little bit further out. But for me, knowing kind of my schedule and just kind of, the time that I want to finish my MBA in, I will stick to the prerequisite, course load that they recommend, which is a course of the summer to make sure that you're finishing by the fall of 2024.
Mm-hmm. And how have you been able to, so you have a cohort, right, of people in your program, and all of the first sort of core you're taking with that Fembo cohort, right? How many people are in that group with you?
Yeah, so they break up the class into different schedules. Obviously, there are individuals who are living in the Bay Area, living in Chicago, different parts of the country. And then for me, obviously, I'm based in LA with some of my other classmates. And my class meets Tuesday, Thursday, and there's about 60 of us in that class, 60 to 65. And then there's other sections that meet on Saturdays or hybrid every other Saturday or kind of once a month, and then you do your schoolwork asynchronously. So it just depends on kind of what your schedule is, what your logistical situation is, and you could decide between the different schedules for your core program. And then once we get into electives our second year, that's kind of fair game in terms of scheduling, and you kind of figure it out from there. So
could someone be like in Los Angeles for one quarter and then they would take the classes live, but then for another quarter, could they be then in the remote group?
Exactly. Yeah. So you can switch out of the specific schedule you're in after each quarter. They do recommend that you do your first year kind of, in, one specific quarter, so you can really meet the rest of your learning team and bond with the rest of kind of your cohort. But yes, theoretically, you could technically switch up your schedule if if something came up and you wanted to, move out of LA or move to LA, and you can kind of just go through that process to figure out what would be best for you after the conclusion of that first quarter.
So that to me, what's interesting about this is just obviously the world changed so much right in the last 2 years, right? And now you have people working remotely and all kinds of options that never existed. So with something like Fembo, you could actually, work remote, like come, be based somewhere else, but come to Los Angeles, take a quarter of classes, but then go back and work remotely and sort of balance it out. So this fluidity of sort of being able to kind of be in the campus, be away from the campus, is something that I have a feeling will increase, because I bet there's a lot of interest in something like that. But UCLA is one of the schools I think that has really a fairly unique program in this, and that's worth kind of interesting. Let me jump for a second and answer a couple of questions that I also see coming in. There's someone who's saying they're a film school graduate producing and want to do an MBA in finance. Will colleges consider that experience? And absolutely. I mean, really everybody, and this is, here on this small profile, we've got engineers, we've got people, operations backgrounds, lots of people, lots of different backgrounds. It doesn't matter so much what your background is. It's that you have impact, that you've actually accomplished something, that you have something the world isn't just the same after you've been involved. Somehow things are better. So whatever you've done, whatever background you have, really think about how you can show the schools that you have impact. And then, that actually ties in with this other question of what matters most to business schools: academics, career focus, work experience. I think they all matter, really. And it's just doing a good job of showing your best side, showing your best self, really, through the admissions process. So showing that you can handle the work academically, showing that you have something to offer, that you're going to make the community better, and that you actually, your classmates will be inspired by you. There is actually, it's an long time ago, investment banking recruiting comment of the Tokyo test, kind of. Would you want to sit on a plane next to this person to Tokyo? Assuming that you're coming from, maybe New York or somewhere far away. Like, are your classmates interesting? Do you have, are you inspired by what these people have done? So I think no matter where you come from, what background, think about, why would someone, what value do I have to bring to the class? And that's really, I think that's key. Let me ask Fanny and Alex, and we'll come back to some general questions here. So their situation now, they're in the regular full-time MBA program. And I think that this is also an increasingly common, or more people thinking about this, couples who are both looking to advance their careers. So you guys are sort of experts on how do you and here we are in February, Valentine's month. How do you stay, sane and have boundaries between your relationship personally, and that you guys are incredibly supportive of each other professionally? So just sort of talk about that. How did you manage being a couple and applying to business schools and staying to the point where you enjoy talking to each other?
Yeah, that was definitely not always easy. To come back to a question you asked earlier, one of the most stressful things was that we really wanted to be accepted at the same time, and ideally in the same school. So that added some additional stress for sure. But what we did to manage our relationship, I think we were both very respectful of the other. And so if someone was living some disappointment, we were trying to be careful not to be bragging or not to talk about sensitive subjects when someone felt like they didn't feel like talking about it. So I think being aware of the other and how they are feeling and being respectful really helped us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if I may add, I think there's pros and cons of applying together, but one big pro is we were kind of encouraging ourselves to stay kind of disciplined throughout the process. Mm-hmm. So if one of us didn't want to study, but the other one was, pushing both of us to study and vice versa. So it kind of helped us kind of stick to our commitments, A good way to commit to something is to vocalize it and be transparent. So that's what we did together. But Fanny is right. You have to understand and kind of prepare for some bittersweet moments where maybe someone will be invited for an interview and someone else won't. And that's just part of the process. But it's, I think there's more pros than cons in applying in a couple.
Got it. One of the things that, and you guys were really extremely successful. I mean, you had a lot of options, and, and that's doubly hard to do because all of the schools that you applied to were really top programs. But one of the things that couples can think about is, okay, what's Chicago is a city we will go to, right? So then if you're looking at Chicago, that gives you Booth and Kellogg. Or if you're saying, I'm going to look at New York, that gives you, Stern and Columbia and, possibly even another school like maybe Pace or something, so that you have options where maybe one person gets into, one school and you still have that as an option to look at. So that's certainly, that's certainly something that people who are applying as couples can look at. You just increase the options and your odds if you give yourself, and there's certain cities, I'm trying to think of even another city that, like, for example, Boston has a ton of MBA programs and universities. So if you really are like, okay, we want to be in Boston, obviously your top choice is that you both end up in the same school. But if you don't get that, you at least have the option to both study in the same, city. And you have to be careful because, for example, like Chicago, even though Booth and Kellogg are both in Chicago land, they're actually like an hour apart. So that's not as much. Whereas UNC, Kenan-Flagler, for example, and Fuqua, which are in different cities, they are only like 8 miles apart. So actually in certain places are maybe easier. But anything else, and this is, just any other advice that you would share for couples that are thinking about, sort of doing this together?
Well, yeah, I think you mentioned it correctly, right? Having a plan A and a plan B, for us, ideally, and it kind of worked out very well, but the best case scenario was we end up in one of our, top choices. We end up being both accepted. And this is what happened. And it was the best day ever when we got the call. But you have to understand that this might not happen. So we did have plan B, like you mentioned, where, if one of us got into one city, then there's other schools in that city. So just understanding, we wanted to at least be living together throughout this experience. But you have to make some smart choices about the schools you select, right? If you go for all reaches, or if you settle for like some target schools, but obviously you want to apply to more than one school as much to kind of put the odds on your side. So
yeah, definitely. And something to keep in mind is that focusing on the top rankings is not necessarily something that you should be doing. First, because these rankings are kind of not necessarily the best thing to have a big picture of which school is the best fit for you. So I know it's tempting to just go for the top ones, but you have to understand that, especially as a couple, you need to find a school that will be a good fit for both of you, a school that values family, that values couples and stuff like that. So just have an open mind and apply to many different schools. As Alex said, I think we applied to 7 different schools. So we really wanted to increase our chances. So yeah, just keep that in mind.
Yeah, no, it definitely, it helps. And I think that's a trend of just more people applying to more schools, which really does give you more options, just in terms of things. One of the things, and you've all experienced this. So I think to Fanny's point, we have at Stratus, we spend a lot of time with our clients way before we do anything about applications, like in terms of, who are you? What are your strengths? What are the things that you need? What are your key development areas? And when you evaluate what do you need from an MBA program, then you really are evaluating the program in a much deeper level. Like, how does this school help me develop the leadership skills I need? How does this school, Alex was interested in fintech. How do I get fintech resources that are going to help me make that transition that I want to make? So when you look at the things more at a granular level, and you can actually say, what does, if someone's interested in real estate, you want to make sure you're going to a program that actually has a lot of electives in real estate, or has a real estate center or a real estate recruiting network. And not every MBA program does that. So you really want to look deeper than just whatever some number is this week, but what does that school offer? And when you do that, it also gives you much more specific support points for that inevitable question that comes up in most MBA applications of, why this school? Why is this going to help you? So really doing that kind of research, it helps you make a better a decision, really, a better, fit. Because when you get out, it's not just, certainly ratings and rankings and all that matter, but, for top 20 MBA programs, they're all, a lot of same recruiters are coming. You can probably get to a lot of the same places, but not every school is going to be the best fit in terms of really helping you thrive and helping you get the most out of that experience. And this might be a good segue just in terms of just your experiences so far. And granted, you're all in your first year, but what are some of the most useful clubs or resources that you've found at Anderson? And this may be helpful for people that are actually applying, over the coming year to do their research. What should be things that, might be must-dos, at Anderson? So I'll let whoever wants to jump in first.
I can kick it off. There's a tremendous amount of clubs and activities at Anderson. There is honestly something for every interest, right? And I think we kind of noticed that when we did our research. But there's definitely clubs that are, well established, that are really useful. So a good one is Endertech. So this is the technology club of Anderson. It's the biggest club on campus. What I've noticed with those clubs, and those we call them professional club, is they really help you kind of pivot into that ecosystem with teaching. So that there's day-long classes on product management, there's career fairs, there's speaker series. They have so much offerings, and you can kind of pick and choose what kind of fits your interests. But they're so well established, and they have such a good brand name in the alumni community that they can go and get some very interesting speaker. And I think that's one of the club that comes in mind. But there's really maybe just another point, another thing I can mention. There's, on top of clubs, there's a lot of different ways to get involved in the community. And a good example I decided to do is a board fellows. So it's this opportunity to sit on a board of a nonprofit for a year in a non-voting role to kind of help influence decision and help them run operation. So this is a nonprofit in LA, and I just started the program, and it's super interesting to kind of understand how all of this works and kind of bringing some of my recently acquired MBA experience to the table and try to helping them kind of be more efficient in operation. So that's really something unique that just a few programs that when we're applying, I noticed was offering. That's something very unique about the program.
All right.
Yeah, for me, I think the most useful club would be the Women's Business Connection. It's also a very big club here at Anderson. And we organize a lot of career events, a lot of leadership development events. So that's been really useful. And also something that's been fun, I would say, is the Outdoors Activity Club. Alex and I are big fans of skiing. And just this past weekend, we were in Mammoth at a ski trip with a lot of our classmates. So that has been very fun and a really good way to make friends and to keep in touch with our peers. So that's something that I really enjoy.
Yeah. And then I'll just add kind of, the club scene, I think at UCLA is one of the more robust ones. And I think, when folks are involved in their respective clubs and organizations, they get very into it. And I think that's part of the passion that you find amongst the student body. One of the clubs that I've enjoyed working with is EMA, which stands for the Entertainment Management Association. And one of the reasons why I think they're so interesting is because obviously LA is kind of, the entertainment capital of the world. And as Alex mentioned, you have a ton of speakers who can come on campus, or I guess remotely right now. And one of the more awesome opportunities here is, the career nights that they have available to students, where you can really, connect with some awesome companies and hear from some interesting individuals in the industry. And then just echoing the balance of all that, I think UCLA has a lot of fun opportunities. As an avid snowboarder, I was also on the Mammoth trip last weekend.
Oh, wow. You guys were,
And then,
you didn't even probably know it. You might have skied right past each other.
Maybe, yes.
But there's just a lot of some opportunities to connect with students outside of the classroom, outside of campus. And I think when you're in a city like LA, the opportunities for that are abundant, as well as other cities as well. But
And just to clarify for people too, I guess the fall quarter you were in person, and then right now there's a little bit of a sort of COVID pause, but the plan is for you guys to go back to in-person classes soon.
Yeah, we actually went back to in-person yesterday. So
Okay.
the COVID pause is over and we are fully in person again.
Correct. Yeah.
Great. So how about, and I remember I enjoyed visiting UCLA Anderson, and what struck me a little bit is just the juxtaposition of sort of, you're on this campus that seems like a campus that could be in the middle of the country, could be anywhere. And then you just walk over a street or two and you're in Westwood, and, it's like, oh, you're in Los Angeles and all, it's fun. How much have you been able to kind of seamlessly flow between campus, and maybe for somebody who may be visiting in the future, what would be some of the fun things that you like to do kind of right around the campus, fun things to eat or meet students or where students hang out?
Yeah, I mean, I think Westwood as a college town definitely is one of the more exciting places, from in and out to local bars or Japanese food, whatever you're looking for. I think Westwood has it all. And then not too far from campus is Santa Monica, just down towards the coast, and then you can go more inland towards Beverly Hills. I would say UCLA's campus is kind of really centered in kind of everything that you would want to get into on the west side of Los Angeles.
Yeah, and to add to that, brother, you mentioned Santa Monica. So we really like to meet with peers at the beach, and that's something we do quite often. So that's one of the advantage of being in West LA, is the proximity to the beach, and that's been really fun. We play some beach volleyball, or just hang out. And also being in LA means that weather is pretty good all year long. So we're really able to do a lot of outdoors activities, or even meet on campus with our teams to work. We've been able to do that outdoors a lot, so that's been really good.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, there's some amazing hikes like right in our backyard. UCLA has like this truly beautiful, amazing campus, right? You're on this, and it's like this own like little thing, but then it's surrounded in Westwood, which is super cool. And a lot of Anderson students live in Westwood, Brentwood, Sawtelle, so you end up kind of seeing a lot of your peers in your neighborhood. There's there's bars and restaurants where when you end up going a lot to meet friends. But the beauty of it is just that it's so well centered in LA, because it's like in West LA, and LA is, you can hike, surf, and then you can drive a couple hours and ski, right? So it's just a beautiful combination of things to do.
I'm smiling because I'm just thinking last year, so Fanny and Alex were in Canada and in Montreal, and with right now, I don't check the weather, but you'd probably be at like, I don't know, 0 or 10 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that. So what a giant shift. I see, Fanny, you're still wearing sweaters. You probably still have so much winter clothes, and have to get used to a whole different wardrobe, and the idea that here it is just early February, and you could be at the beach. So that's kind of a bonus when you think about a lot of the places. I would say a lot of the business schools really, I would say it over indexes in cold places. There are more of the options for, great MBA programs in colder climates. And UCLA is one of those nice options where you don't have to, you get the best of both worlds. Let's see. So let me ask you all then some questions about and then let me just jump in and say one thing about, there was another question that came in about letters of recommendation. So this is a self-employed entrepreneur who can write your recommendation. So this is a case where in his question, there's actually a little bit of the answer. You can certainly look to a previous employer. You don't want to have, and this is a situation, anybody in the family business too, you can't have your parents writing your recommendation letter. You don't want to have your spouse writing your recommendation letter. But if you have, for example, a board of directors and the board has been someone who's in a role that way, that a person like that could write a recommendation, or anybody that you work with professionally, if you have a business partner, a lawyer, an accountant, or someone who's seen you. So that's really, you want to, and certainly if you had previous employers and it's relatively recent, in the last couple of years, you don't want to go back 10 years to get a recommendation. But if you've got someone, and that's certainly, Alberto, you should check Stratus Admissions website, because we do frequently, with my colleague Lisa Cummings, we do a letters of recommendation and sort of everything about how to get great recommendation letters from your from people that have worked with you in the past. So I encourage you to look out for that. I'm sure we're going to be doing it again this spring. So for everybody, what's been, would you say, the biggest surprise? Something that you knew this was going to be good, but even better than you expected since you started your MBA?
I'll jump in first. I think for me, obviously, in my specific program, I think the biggest surprise has been how manageable it's been. I think going into it, I knew I would be taking on a lot, maintaining my role at Tempo and then starting, the MBA program at UCLA. But I think the biggest surprise for me has been how manageable it's been, and being able to, have resources on campus to help me, through certain things, or meeting other folks who are also going through something. That affinity has been, really nice to have. But, I think, again, just being able to manage the workload with school, and then obviously the work itself has definitely been probably the biggest surprise for me.
Mm-hmm. And let me jump in, and before I have Fanny and Alex answer. So in terms of manageable, so is it like you said you have 2 classes a quarter. So is it like each class meets Tuesdays and Thursdays for 2 hours? So how many hours a week are you in class?
Yeah, so it's about 3 hours on Tuesday nights and then Thursday nights.
So 6 hours a week?
Correct. Yes.
Class time.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. And then you're obviously spending a couple hours a day or so preparing and getting ready for the next class. But something that doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound awful.
Correct. Yeah, it's definitely manageable. I would say, you definitely have to, be intelligent, or I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Deliberate with your time, and smart about how you kind of pace your day. And that time management skill set, I think, is something that all MBAs in general work with, just because of the fact that we're so busy. But yeah, it's definitely been manageable on that side in terms of class, for sure.
And have you been able to use some of your work examples or work problems and sort of even use those examples in your class?
Yeah. So a good example of this was my first quarter, we took statistics as part of the core. And in my current role at Tempo, I'm on the data analytics team, and we're doing a lot of experimentation right now with some of our users. So the statistics directly correlated into some of the experimentation that we're running on the company side, which has been pretty cool.
Good. Yeah, that's great. So how about Fanny and Alex, biggest surprise? What didn't expect, or better than you even thought it could be?
I can kick it off. I think it's similar to Bradley. I think my biggest surprise is, classes are not going to be the thing you necessarily spend the most time on, which, when I was first thinking about doing an MBA was to go, have the knowledge of an MBA. But then arriving here at UCLA, you understand that there's so much more ways to kind of get the full experience of your MBA, which is, getting involved in clubs, different activities, connecting through your peer, building that network. So my biggest surprise is that, classes are one part of your experience, but they're far from being the entire experience. So that's,
Yeah, and for me, I would say what surprised me the most is how much time we spend with our peers who truly become friends. Everyone here is so awesome, and we all just want to hang out with each other all the time. So that has been very fun. So there's definitely a great balance between working hard and having fun. And I think I was expecting to just work all the time, but it's been great, and we've been able to hang out with a lot of friends, so that's been super fun.
Right. That's the observation I had when I visited Anderson, and as part of this group that I'm in, the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants, AGAC. We would travel, and of course, obviously, COVID has put a little wrinkle in that the last couple of years, but we've still had some virtual meetings. But we visited physically campuses, and in one swing of the West Coast, we visited, Stanford, and we visited Wharton's San Francisco campus, and then Anderson and Haas. And one of the things that struck me when we visited Anderson on that trip was just how, it was kind of a work hard, play hard, and not in a way that was like great, but just people really seemed to, it was a very social place, and people had, just enjoyed like the club activities. That they have that hallway where they're like, all the clubs have, pictures of, being together. And that struck me as, just something. And of course, if you're doing a study group on the beach or on a beach table, you're still working, but how can you not be smiling, when you're seeing such great weather? And that's a good, so your favorite, what would be some of your favorite, like, places, like where are must eat at places near you, and also must meet professors? So let me hear some of those.
I'll give a plug for Professor Terry Kramer. So he's an awesome professor that I had the privilege of connecting with prior to starting at UCLA, and I can't wait to take his electives, when I'm eligible in my second year. He has been someone who I think, especially if you're interested in technology, is really at the forefront of a lot of it. He works closely with kind of the Tech Association at UCLA, and I think his energy and charisma, and obviously his experience and knowledge in the space, is definitely something that I can't wait to engage with more. And then most must-eat places. If you're not from California, you should probably go to In-N-Out. I think that's just like a local. But in general, I think some of my favorite places to eat, Alex and Fanny mentioned a neighborhood, which is actually where I live. It's called Sawtelle. They have the best, in my opinion, like ramen or Japanese cuisine, if you're looking for that on the west side. So that would be my recommendation for must-eat food places.
Okay. How about you guys?
Yeah, I totally agree with Sawtelle. It's a great neighborhood for food, a lot of different types of Asian food. So it's really great to discover all these little places. So totally agree with that. There are
professors so far that you've enjoyed the most, or looking forward to taking?
Yeah, so right now, Alex and I are in the same finance class, and our professor is called David Wessels, and he is super fun, super entertaining. He is great at keeping our attention, and great at teaching us finance as well. So that's been really good so far.
Yeah, to add on to David Wessel, I think he's been good at kind of translating what we've been learning to how it's going to be applied in the real world. It's more than just here's what you need to know about finance. It's like you'll eventually need to do this these decisions, whether you're gonna grow up into a leadership role or entrepreneurship. So here's how you make those decisions. And I've seen a lot of profs at UCLA. I mean, the quality of the faculty is amazing. All the profs are super knowledgeable in their own field. But what has been great is most of them also care deeply about, making sure that you fully understand the material and making sure that you're not just taking away a couple formulas or a couple, like you're taking away like a way of thinking that's going to be applied in your job, or for Fembas that can be applied right away. So I really enjoy that, because it's more than just here's what you need to know and figure it out. It's like here's what's important, and here's how you'll use it later. And I think that perspective is really nice.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, our professors really care about us, and that's something coming from an engineering background. I was not really used to that. So professors care so much, and a lot of them organize some lunches or some happy hours with small groups. So we get the opportunity to connect, not one-on-one, but with small groups with them. And they just do that to get to know us better. So that's also amazing on their side.
Yeah, that's actually, so for people that are thinking questions to ask, I think a great question to ask students is, what kind of interaction have you had with your professors outside the classroom? And again, even if it's a group of 3 or 4, getting a chance to know someone so that you feel comfortable when you graduate, emailing them and asking them a question, that's sort of really useful to know. So how about best, just sort of, we only have a few more minutes left. So like kind of your best advice, and like sort of last tips. And actually, before I do that, let me just answer, Seem had a question. How much do you think your previous experience contributed to you being able to survive business school? So in other words, if you've had, so maybe just talk to this, if you've had, like, how have you, if you feel like you've lost touch with being able to study since you've been out working, what do you recommend to sort of get back into school or be able to help you? And so let me have people jump into that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, there's a lot of courses that you can take, or there's resources out there that can help you with any type of, Gmat prep or GRE prep. So I would definitely use those resources and kind of rely on that if that's, something you want to brush up on in terms of skill set.
Okay.
Yeah. To Bradley's point, the Gmat kind of puts you back in it, but just understanding it's different than going back to school. It's everything that you're learning is very like applicable and concrete, and you're all in the same boat. Like very few, and I'm not even sure there's someone in the program that goes from undergrad to grad school. Most of us have 5 years of experience. So, just understanding that everyone is kind of a bit lost touch with studying, and we all just have to jump back in that boat.
Yeah, and really rely on your peers as well. We have a lot of teamwork, so being there for each other, helping each other out through this process has been helpful.
Yeah, and last point to that, I think Anderson does a good job of putting together cohorts with people with different backgrounds. So you'll have someone who's more quant focused, you might have someone who's more qualitative focused. So you have a good balance of learning teams. So you'll have a lot of people to pull and learn from as well.
Yeah, and then just we're almost at the top of the hour. So that Parker Career Management Center, I think, is one of the best for sort of helping people think about career transitions. So in the remaining second or two that we have, if Fanny has anything or Alex to say about their experience with Parker, or Bradley, anybody want to jump in about Parker career management experience?
Yeah, Parker has been really great. I'm recruiting for something that's a bit different from everyone, and even then, they are super useful. They always take the time to help me out and research companies with me. They help us practice for interviews. They do so much with us. They've been really great.
Yeah. No, Parker's been great. I mean, they set up this process to kind of that kind of caters to everyone, and then you can deep dive into what you're interested in. But they help you kind of get organized with your cover letters, your resume, your interviews. For me, recruiting in tech obviously was like so structured, and they're always there to support you throughout the entire year. So it's been a great resource for sure.
Great. Well, I want to be mindful of the fact that, and I cannot thank you all enough. Literally, these people have gotten up in the middle of the night, practically. You all have, it's super early. All of my, people that I know on the West Coast would probably be in class by now. So you guys are going to be extra peppy. Cannot thank you all enough for spending time. I guess they just put on for the thing. If you'd like to, this is a great time of year for anybody who is thinking about sort of getting some coaching through this process. So you can go to Stratus's website. That's right there for a free consultation. I'd be glad to talk to anybody. And again, I just encourage everybody who is in this process to, sort of try to find something to enjoy about it. It is, I think, an opportunity to get to know yourself better. Also, one of the things that all three of you did you're just super nice people. And I think that as you go through life, MBA programs, when you're super nice, people want to help you. So that's a great, and be appreciative of the people that help you along the way and pay it forward. And all of you today, super nice of you to pay it forward and get up early. And I hope you all need to go and have, lunch or dinner together and enjoy your time in Anderson. So I think that's it. Have a great day, everybody. And if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out. Like I said, in a consult, we'd be happy to help you further. All right. So goodbye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thank